Hi guys, David Jennings here from davidjennings.com, and quite excited today. Lined up an excellent interview with you guys. Found out there's a new bit of software that you're probably going to hear a little bit more about that's coming down the pipe called Domainer Income, and I wanted to find out from behind the scenes, one of the main guys behind the scenes over at Domainer Income, a little bit more about it, and I suppose find out a little bit more to differentiate between buying and selling web businesses and how that compares to domaining itself. So we've got Simon Johnson here, so thank you for coming down.
That's right, thanks for having me.
Excellent. I suppose to just dig in straight away, now you're a full-time domainer, so perhaps you can tell us a little bit about what is a full-time domain namer as opposed to, you know, some people are in the internet marketing space and they're familiar with buying and selling websites. How does it differentiate, or how would you separate the two, or is it the same thing?
It's very similar. I mean, there is an overlap between internet marketing and buying and selling domains and websites and domain names, and essentially it's the same thing. However, there are some subtle differences in terms of domaining, in that some domainers may buy a domain name and park it at a parking company. In other words, they might put ads on it, versus building it out into a website or a fully fledged business. So there are some subtleties and things that you'll pick up along the way, but that's essentially the difference.
Yeah, and it's your core business, isn't it? You just buy and sell.
That's right. We buy and develop domains. We're full time and have people that do it for us. The development part, and that's all we do. We rarely sell domains. We only usually sell under exceptional circumstances, but our core model is building out as many as we can.
Yeah. So when you're buying these domain names, if you're not looking to sell, there's usually, oftentimes when you sell something, you get a big capital hit at that point in time. These businesses that you're buying, or these domain names, you're monetizing it. It's really just about adding it to that portfolio, creating a cash flow, and then building that cash flow.
Yeah, it's literally about getting the domain name up to a certain point where it can, sit by itself, and you just get that passive income without us doing anything to it.
Well, I know you've been doing this since the dawn of time. Starting on the internet way back when modems were around, dial-up modems and BBSs and that type of thing.
Right.
And from domain name registering, like we're based in here in Melbourne, Australia, and before Melbourne IT, we were talking, or you were saying, you registering domain names through, was it Melbourne Uni? Or
Melbourne University actually was the place to register domain names a very long time ago, before ICANN and before OUTA and any other industry body. So you literally had to fax off your paperwork or send it in the post and fill in some sign your life away, and eventually, if subject to their blessing, you may get the domain.
There's been a huge evolution, and we can see just the way the marketplace has changed now. But I imagine, we were talking about some of the stories just before we started recording here, just to get an idea of, maybe some of the stories, or one of the stories that you came across in your domaining history, just to give people, I suppose, gives them a little bit of an idea that, you know your stuff. And I think that's what I like to do whenever I talk to anyone, is make sure, I always like to go to the source and make sure you find someone who's, they know what it is that they're talking about.
Yeah, so there's quite a few stories, because I've bought quite a lot of domains, but, a couple that do stand out, and one of them was when we were bidding at an auction. There was a domain that I particularly wanted and was very passionate about. It was in a niche that we operate in, and I happened to be on holidays with my family and kids in the Gold Coast, and I ended up sneaking out of bed one morning because the auction was at 5 a.m. and I'm sitting there in this big place looking over the sea, belting away in the auction platform, bidding furiously, and at the time, the other bidder, there was only one other bidder, and he was bidding against me at a really rapid pace, and literally the domain went from $60, which was the minimum bid, straight up into the thousands, and I just thought,
what was the domain name?
I actually can't remember the domain. It was a .com, but it was a generic. It was a generic
single keyword.
Yeah. And it was one of those things at the time. Now, this is quite a few years back, that there weren't a lot of people around bidding in this particular auction platform, and I won't name them, but what ended up happening was the other bidder was bidding so much in such a rapid pace. I just thought, this is a robot. This is not some person who's bidding. This can't be real. so at 5 a.m. in the morning, I ended up giving up on that, only to find later when I questioned the auction platform, the people that run the place, they said, "Oh no, we can assure you that wasn't." And I checked into it, and soon enough, it was probably one of the world's largest domain holders who operates out of the Cayman Islands, who had a lot more deeper pockets than I had.
To get into the space where you say one of the largest domain name holders, how many domain names are we talking? Like, I mean, how many domain names do you hold, and how much?
Well, I mean, the largest, the person I was bidding against, who I won't name, I know owns in excess of 450,000 domains.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking people with, very, very deep pockets who have had these over time, many of whom sell their, generic keywords in .com for millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So this is not your average, industry that buys domains in the hundreds. They're very serious developers, and they often sell their names to, large corporates for, that price.
So people, I suppose this comes down to the way to make a full-time income in domaining at the moment. It's about identifying those opportunities, these domain names, seeing value in them, hopefully trying to get them as they're coming up as expired or whatever, or about to expire. We can go into that a little bit more, and then trying to figure out a way, well, how do I back-end monetize them up until a point at which we can then create it as a saleable asset for someone else. So, and you were saying, look, you're adding them to your portfolio, your long-term view, thinking, domain names are never going to go out of fashion. If anything, they're going to get more popular, so I might as well hold on to this asset. Is that where you're at? And then what do you do to monetize that? You develop, park?
Well, it's a really good question, because it depends on what the end goal is in mind. So if we do lots of different things, so we might park some domains that we think are best put in parking companies, and that's often the less preferred option. We usually do those for international domains, so foreign language domains that we know have value, or IDNs as they're called, international domain names, where we don't necessarily have or want to obtain the expertise to develop in that language. So parking companies already have that, and are a really quick and easy way for you to earn recurring income there. If you've got, say keyword domains like we have in the com, net and org space, or even in .com.au, then you might want to develop them out from CPA offers, or make them into businesses, or do something with local business.